So we start with the Black Cauldron, and I don't know how far we'll get into the Castle of Lear. We'll at least get halfway. We might even finish it, which if we did, we'd then be a day ahead. But we left off last time with chapter 19. Taryn and the others have run into Morgant, and we're actually going to pick up at the end of chapter 18 because I skipped over something because of the rush of time. In 158:59, Eilonwy's going on about Gwistel, and she says, why, he wouldn't have done the least thing for us until Dolly threatened to squeeze him, Gwistel. All he wanted was to be let alone and hide in his wretched burrow. Morgant replies, you speak without knowledge, princess. Among all who hold the waypost, Gwistel of the fair folk is the shrewdest and bravest. Did you believe King Idaleg would trust a lesser servant so close to a Nuven? But if you misjudged him, that's because he wanted you to. He goes on, and he says, as for the Crocan itself, that is the Black Cauldron, though you failed to bring it from Morva, Prince Eladir has done us noble service. He says, yes, we found him. We've got the cauldron. He says, from his words, I understand that you were drowned and your companions scattered, and that he bore the cauldron from Morva. Eilonwy, that's not true. Taryn, be silent. Why does Taryn tell her to be silent?
Because he gave his oath to Eladir.
He swore an oath to Eladir that they would never take credit. No, I will not be silent. You aren't going to tell me you still think you're bound by that oath you made us all swear. Morgan, what is she talking about? Eilonwy, it's very simple. Taryn paid for it and paid dearly. We carried it almost on our backs every step of the way from Morva until Eladir came along. He helped us. He did. Just the way a robber helps you tidy up your chamber. That's the truth of it. Morgant looks at Taryn. Does he speak the truth? Does she speak the truth? No answer, no reply. I believe she does, Morgant says, though you say stay silent. There is much of Prince Eladir's tale which rang false to me. As I once told you, Taryn of Caradalbin, I am a warrior and I know my men. But when you face Eladir himself, then I'll know beyond all doubt. So he tells Taryn to ride with him. Okay? And the chapter ends with them being disarmed and bound. Page 161 at the bottom, chapter 19. Taryn says to Morgant, you are already a traitor. Will you now be a murderer? We are under the protection of Gwydion. You will not escape his wrath. Morgant, I don't fear Gwydion. In other words, okay, so what's your next point? What's he going to do to me? His protection is worthless to you now. Worthless indeed to all Prydain. Why? Even Gwydion is powerless against the Cauldron-born. Taryn doesn't think he really plans on using it. You would not dare to use the Crocan. Really? You believe so? Then you have more lessons to learn than that of obedience. In other words, then you're not as good a judge of man as I am. The cauldron belongs to him who knows how to keep it and how to use it. It is a weapon ready for a hand. For years, Aran was master of the cauldron, but he lost it. Is this not proof he was unworthy? That he did not have the strength or cunning to prevent it slipping from his grasp? Eladir believed he could keep it. He is hardly fit to be cast into it. Well, what comes out when somebody is thrown in? A cauldron born, but what does that mean?
A dead man.
Yeah, they're essentially dead. They no longer have any human desires, needs, or wants. Okay? And they can't really be killed. So, why is Eladir hardly fit to be cast into it? Because you don't even have to be living. You can dig up corpses and throw them in.
Because he hardly has a life to, leave behind.
Yeah, but he'd still come out as a warrior. I mean, what Morgan doesn't mean that literally. He means it figuratively. He's saying Eladir is the lowest of the low. Terran, what? You think you're going to be the rival of Iran? Morgan, no. I will surpass him. I know my worth, though I've chafed in the service of lesser men than I. Lesser men, Gwydion, the High King. Now I see the moment is ripe. There are few who understand the uses of power, and few who dare use it when it is offered them. Few who understand the uses of power. Does Dalbin understand the use of power?
Yeah.
Not according to the way Morgan thinks of it. Morgan thinks what about power?
That should be used
Yeah.
as much as possible.
If you have it, use it. Okay? Morgan says to Terran, Gwydion has spoken of you. He told me little, but that little is of interest. You are a bold youth, perhaps more than that. How much more, I don't know. But I do know you are without family, without name, or without future. In other words, what's he saying?
That he's nothing.
Louder?
He's a nobody.
You're a nobody, you're a nothing. And he hasn't offered it yet, but it's implied. I can give you family, name, power. You can expect nothing. And yet, you can expect everything. He says, I won't offer this to Eladir. Why? He's too prideful. Weakest where he believes himself strong. I told you I know good metal. There is much that is possible with you, Terran of Caer Dallben, and this is what I offer. Swear you shall serve me as your liege lord, and when the time is right, you shall be my war leader, second only to me. Terran, why? Why would you choose me? As I've said, there's much you might achieve if the way is open for you. Okay? He obviously sees something in Terran that Terran doesn't see in himself. Do not deny you have dreamed long of glory. It is not impossible for you to find, if I judge you well. Terran, judge me well. Judge me well, and you would know I scorn to serve an evil traitor. I don't have time to listen to rage. In other words, hearing you talk about good and evil, it's just nonsense. Okay? If we were reading the Harry Potter stories, we would hear at the end of the first Harry Potter novel, one of the characters say, there is no such thing as good and evil. There is only power and those too weak to seek it. Okay? Will you be first among my warriors? Here's your choice, Terran of Caer Dallben. Will you be first among my warriors, or will you be first among my cauldron-born? You're going to be first, woo, either way. But one way, you still have free will, you still have choice, you still have your soul. The other way, you're nothing but a robot. Terran, give me to the cauldron. Cast me in it, even as I live. Okay. Boy, you called me traitor. Are you calling me a fool? I know the secret of the cauldron. You think I would have the croaking shatter even before it began its work? Yes, I've been to the marshes of Morva. I knew that sooner or later Gwydion must make his move against Iran, and so I prepared myself. Did you pay a price for the croaking? I, too, paid a price for the knowledge of its workings. I know how to destroy it, and I know how to make it yield a harvest of power. He says, but, you're bold, kid. You fear me, and there are many in Prydain who do. Yet you defy me. Few do that. It'd be a waste. Terran was about to speak, but he doesn't. Morgant says towards the bottom of that page, 164, who will it devour before you cry halt? Just before then, he says, one by one, your companions shall be slain and given to the croaking. how many of them have to die before you say, stop? Will it be the bard, or the shabby creature that serves you, Gurgi, or the young princess? They shall go before you even as you watch, and you will be last. Weigh this carefully. In other words, I'll give you some time to think about it. And Fluter says, when they're left by themselves, if I'd known this back when we were at the marshes of Morva, I would have let them turn me into a toad. At the time, I didn't care for the idea. Now, it's better than being cauldron-born. Terran, he won't succeed. Somehow, we got to escape. Okay? And Terran finally says, bottom of that page, 165, I will accept what Morgant offers. Arlanwi, what? I thought you'd actually learned something. How can you do that? Terran, I shall swear my allegiance to Morgant. He shall have my word, but not make me keep it. An oath given under threat of death cannot bind me. This way, at least, we may gain a little time. Arlanwi, are you sure? Do you imagine Morgant won't guess what you planned? He has no intention of keeping his part of the bargain. He's going to slay us anyways. Okay? So they're trying to figure out what they can do when they suddenly hear a voice say, bottom of 167, they hear Eladir stir, and he says, top of 168, and so we are together again, Terran of Caradalbin. I did not expect us to meet so soon. Terran, don't worry. We won't see each other for long. Eladir, for that I am truly sorry. I would make up the ill I have done all of you. Would you have said the same if the cauldron were still in your hands? Terran says. Eladir, I don't know. Telling the truth. The black beast you saw is a harsh master. Its claws are sharp, yet I did not feel them until now. In other words, he now recognizes his pride and the anger and all that goes with the pride. But I tell you this, I stole the cauldron out of pride, not evil. I swear to you on whatever honor remains to me, I would not have used it. Yeah, I would have taken your glory, sure. But I would have borne the croken to Gwydion and offered it for destruction. And Terran says, I believe you. Well, big deal. And now perhaps even more than you believe it yourself. So, Terran thinks, well, he picked it up by himself before. He picked up a horse. Can you pick up the cauldron? Have you strength enough to break your bonds and free the rest of us? Eladir rolls on his side. And he says, I fear Morgant has given me the death wound. Dolly shows up. Page 171. They're now all untied. Dolly's thinking, quick, out the back of the tent. We can flee. But Eladir had risen to his feet. 171, middle of the page. I had not strength enough to break my own bonds, but I can still serve you. And before Terran could stop him, Eladir plunged from the tent. Terran saw Morgant fall back in astonishment, then draw his sword. Morgant says, slay him, keep him from the cauldron. Terran sees Eladir fighting as he had never fought before. The Prince of Pinlarku, Terran knew, was calling on all the strength remaining to him. Eladir threw the warrior down, but faltered and cried out as the man's sword thrust deep into his side. Terran says, save yourself, and he jumps into the cauldron. It shudders and breaks. And just at that moment, Gwydion comes in to save the day. Well, most of the day. Eladir's still dead. Smoit comes in with him. Terran goes to Eladir's side, page 173, and we're told, Sterin tumbled to Eladir's side and tried to raise him. He bowed his head in grief. The black beast is gone from you, Prince of Pinlarku. They hear Eladir's horse whinny. They clear the bodies away. And Gwydion kind of has some final word. He says on 174, Fluter told me everything that happened. That is, including your oath, how you got the cauldron and such. And to you too, assistant pig keeper, Gwydion says, the Crocan is destroyed, and with it Iran's power to add to the numbers of his cauldron board. One of the gravest defeats Iran has ever suffered. But I know the price you paid. That is the brooch. Terran, it is Eladir who paid the final price. The last honor belongs to him. He has lost all else, even his steed. Well, he's dead, so the steed doesn't matter. Gwydion, well, that's one way of looking at it, Terran. The other way is, maybe he's gained everything. And his honor shall be certain. In other words, prior to throwing himself in the cauldron, how much honor did Eladir really have?
None.
Zip. And so he's gained all. What else has he gained? Or what else did he gain by throwing himself in the cauldron?
Respect.
Respect? Himself. He came to himself. He was what Eladir was always meant to be. He says, Islamak too shall rest with him, for they are both now at peace. Smoit's dead shall also sleep in honor. And a barrow be raised above Morgant, king of Madoc. Terran's like, what? He was a traitor. It's because of him that Eladir's dead. How can there be honor for such a man? Look at Gwydion's reply. It is easy to judge evil unmixed. Right? Who in our world do we today, looking back on the past, who do we say, well, that person was just out and out evil?
Hitler.
Hitler. Good example. Stalin. Another good example. Okay? We could, be here all day picking out names like this. And yet, look at what Morgant says and then apply that possibly to Hitler and Stalin.
I mean, Gwydion.
Yeah, Gwydion says. But alas, in most of us, good and bad are closely woven as the threads on a loom. Was Morgant always evil? Was he always a traitor?
No.
Nope, he died one. Does that mean he should have a, negative mark on him for all eternity? Gwydion is saying no. Okay. Was there any good that Hitler did? Well, if you've ever seen his paintings, he's a beautiful artist. Amazing artist. In fact, it's kind of too bad. If he'd only been accepted into the art school in Vienna, the whole Second World War maybe never would have happened. Okay? If Stalin maybe had completed what he was training for when he read Marx. Anybody know what he was training for? The priesthood. Maybe he would have learned some things about love and judging others, etc. And I imagine Terrence sitting over there going, don't know about this. Greater wisdom than mine is needed for the judging. What's Gwydion saying? I'm not going to judge Morgant's soul. Above my pay grade. King Morgant served the sons of Dawn long and well. Until the thirst for power parched his throat, he was a fearless and noble lord. In battle, he saved my life more than once. He goes, that's part of his story. Cannot be put aside or forgotten. Okay. Apply that, man, I never even saw this before, and to what is going on in the United States now with regard to, I don't know, Confederate statues.
I actually saw one. Christopher Columbus was graffitied like 2 days ago because he killed Native Americans.
Yeah, not personally he didn't. If you read about Columbus's travels, he didn't personally kill Native Americans, okay? Francis Scott Key's statue in Baltimore, Maryland. The guy who wrote the Star-Spangled Banner was graffitied. Okay? He wasn't even a Confederate. Died long before the Confederacy.
Abraham
Okay.
Lincoln's.
Well, yeah, Lincoln's, I think I've told you the story about a student I had once who made the triumvirate of Lincoln, Stalin, and Hitler.
Yep.
Okay? So think of Gwydion's logic here, and what's he saying? I mean, even somebody, let's use an example that maybe applies better. Nathan Bedford Forrest. Right? It still has it on the building, Forest Hall, the ROTC building. Okay? There's still a statue of him in Nashville. I went to school, I got my PhD at a university that resided in a county named for him, Forest County, Mississippi. Okay. Was Nathan Bedford Forrest? Nathan Bedford Forrest, Confederate hero, part founder of the KKK, all his life?
No.
No. But if you read even a little bit about him, what do you find out after the Civil War? One, he broke with the KKK. And two, in his last years, he worked to bring equality to blacks and whites and to bridge them together. But you never hear that part. Okay? What's Gwydion saying? These things are part of him. The instance there, however, is flipped. It'd be like if Nathan Bedford Forrest were Florence Nightingale in the first half, and I'm not talking gender bending, but you get the idea.
Mm-hmm.
The first half of his life, and he did something really bad at the end. Or if Hitler had, been founding hospitals and orphanages in his youth, and then he goes all Nazi at the end. Gwydion says, and so shall I honor Morgant for what he, used to be. Not for his last thing, but for the first thing he did in his life. And he's going to honor Ellidyr, Prince of Pinlarca, what? Not for the first part of his life, but for the last part of his life. In other words, I'm going to honor them for the good that they did. He's going to overlook the bad. Okay? So, middle of the next page, Fluter's talking. He says, the beastly old kettle is smashed to bits. The bards shall sing of this, or shall sing of our deeds and of his. And Doley says, I don't care about that, because he's always negative. Page 176. Gwistle's there, and Taryn's like, you're not going to trick me, Gwistle. I know you're not the negative Nelly you make yourself out to be. I know who you are and the valiant service you have rendered. Call lands on Taryn's shoulder, and Gwistle says, go on, because he's sitting there. Put him on your shoulder, that's what he wants. He says, for that matter, he's yours. You can have him as a gift, with the thanks of the fair folk. Why? For you have done us a service too. We were uneasy with the croaking knocking about here and there. One never knew what would happen. Yes, pick him up. So Taryn picks up the bird and starts petting it. He's taken quite a fancy to you. It's just as well. It's simply not up to keeping crows anymore. I'm simply not up to keeping crows anymore. Not at all. Okay? And Caw goes, Taryn! Caw! Taryn! Page 177. Taryn's got the crow perched on his shoulder, and he's riding alongside Gwydion. They're making their way back to Caer Dallben. And he says, it's strange. I had longed to enter the world of men. Now I see it filled with sorrow, with cruelty and treachery, with those who would destroy all around them. Notice how he puts that. Now I see it filled with. Like this bottle, if it were up to here, is filled with water. What does that filled with mean?
That means nothing more can go in.
Yeah, there's nothing else. He's saying adulthood doesn't have anything but sorrow, cruelty, treachery, and those who would destroy all around them. Gwydion, yet enter it you must. In other words, you're becoming a man, Taryn, and guess what? You can't stop that. For it is a destiny laid on each of us. You're right, you have seen these things. But there's more. Gwydion says, there are equal parts of love and joy. Think of Adion and believe this. Think too of your companions. Out of friendship for you, they would have given up all they valued. Indeed, all they possessed. Taryn nods. I see now the price I paid was the least of all. Why? The brooch was never truly mine. It was Adion's. He gave it to me just because he didn't know of anybody better. I wore it, but it wasn't part of me. That is, it was external to me. The harp, is the harp external to Fluter?
Nope.
No, it isn't really. What does the harp serve as, or help serve as, for Fluter? It's almost like the physical manifestation of his conscience. Don't tell lies. Why? Bing! What about the ring and the bauble for Eilonwy? Well, we deal with that in this book. The wallet for Gurgi?
It's all he owns.
Yeah, because he's not really human yet, so he doesn't have this whole thing of self-control and self-denial and such. I wore it, but it was not part of me. I'm thankful I kept it as long as I did. At least I knew for a little while how a bard must feel and what it must be like to be a hero. He's thinking, for the little bit of time when I held this thing, that's what it means to be a hero. Gwydion, that is why your sacrifice was all the more difficult. You chose to be a hero, not through enchantment, but through your own manhood. You did what a hero does. What's he saying a hero does?
Big sacrifices.
Makes sacrifices. A hero denies himself. A hero denies his wants, his desires, to serve the wants and desires of somebody else. And since you have chosen, for good or ill, you must take the risks of a man. You may win or you may lose. Time will decide. Notice what he doesn't tell Taryn.
That he'll definitely get through it.
The lies that people tell children. Oh, don't worry, Susie. It'll be okay. You know, maybe it won't. Think of the children at daycares, at schools on 9/11, whose parents went off to work, or whose parents boarded planes, or whose parents went off to work at the two towers, or whose parents boarded planes, or were flying the planes, or whose parents went to work at the Pentagon, whose parents never came home. And a teacher, a caregiver, somebody came and said, don't worry, Susie, I'm sure your parents are okay. And 16 years later, they're still gone. Okay? That's a horrible lie to tell a 1-year-old, a 5-year-old, a 15-year-old, a 25-year-old, a 55-year-old. Because it won't always be better. Sometimes, to put it bluntly, your ticket's up. The Grim Reaper shows up for you. Okay? They make their way in to the Valley of Istrad, and Gwydion says, we're going to Caer Dathel to bring word to King Math. You go to Dalbin. Go swiftly. Your comrades wait for you. And Call, I know, is eager to ready his vegetable garden for winter. In other words, time goes on, and what must you, hero of, the battle for the cauldron, do?
Go back home.
Got to plant the garden. Because if you don't plant the garden, nothing grows. And how are you going to survive the winter? In other words, Being a hero isn't all about being heroic. It's doing what is required. Okay? So we leave that book and we pick up with the Castle of Lear. And look at the author's note. He says at the end of Roman numeral 8, into the first page of the author's note, the mood of this book perhaps is bittersweet rather than grandly heroic. But the adventure should hold something beyond the fairy tale elements of a magic golden bauble. Right? This thing that has some kind of magical property, though we don't know what it is. We find out in the course of the novel. A vengeful queen, Ochran, whom we've met, a mysterious castle, and rivals for the hand of a princess. The nature of fantasy allows happenings which reveal most clearly our own frailties and our own strengths. The inhabitants of Prydain are fantasy figures. I hope they're also very human. What did he mean? Revealing our frailties and our strengths. Okay? So, chapter 1, Prince Rune. Describe Prince Rune.
Clueless.
Clueless. What else?
Incompetent.
Oh, yeah, you would have to pick a long word. Incompetent. What else?
He's always happy, so kind of optimistic about things.
He's very optimistic. He's positive.
Except he also feels bad about himself when he does things wrong. So.
Okay, so why does he feel bad about himself when he does things wrong? What does that show about him?
He's good natured.
Okay, I think it's this. He is somewhat, at least, that's not a W. He is somewhat self-aware. Not perfectly, but who is? Not even Gwydion is.
Isn't he a little bit envious of Taryn?
Is he envious of Taryn?
I wouldn't say so.
No, it's the other way around. I think. My bad. Sorry. Referring to Ellen Way.
Yeah, I mean, Taryn's envious because what does he learn about Rune?
He's a prince.
He's a prince. What else?
He's to be married to.
He's to be married to Eilonwy. Okay. So, we find out, opening chapter, Eilonwy is going off. And Dalbin says, but you'll always have a home here. Don't worry about it. Page 4. She says, I don't care about being a princess. And since I'm already a young lady, how else could I behave other than as a young lady? Notice she's using lady in a different sense than Dalbin is using. That's like asking a fish to learn how to swim. Dalbin, I've never seen a fish with skinned knees, torn robe, and unshod feet. In other words, not the definition of a lady. Child, do you not see? For each of us comes a time when we must be more than what we are. What? What do you mean we must be more than what we are?
We gotta grow and change.
We've got to grow and change? Okay. Is that really what he means? We must become who we are meant to be, I think is what he means. Okay? And he turns to Taryn and says, watch over her carefully. He says, I'm not sure about letting you and Gurgi go with her, but if it eases the parting, go. Taryn says, don't worry. The Princess Eilonwy, notice now the title, shall go safely to Mona. Bottom of page 5. Taryn just won't stop talking about Eilonwy to call. And Call says, right in the middle, after Terrence says, I shall miss her. Did you tell her that? No, not exactly. I suppose I should have, but every time I began talking, I felt odd. Call. Terrence finishes, you never know what silly remarks you'll come out with when you're trying to be serious. Call. Maybe. It may be we know least what we treasure most. In other words, it might be that we don't know where our treasure really lies. But we will have more than enough to keep us busy when you come back. And you will learn, my boy, there is nothing like work to put the heart at rest. In other words, Call sees what the problem is, even though Terran is completely oblivious. What can Terran not put into words? Yeah. He has affection for Alonri. Call sees it plain as day. And he says, don't worry, boy. You're going to be working hard when you get back here. Okay? You won't have time to think about her. And when you do have time to think about her, you're going to be so tired and sore from all the hard work, you won't be able to think about her. Okay? So, they meet Prince Rune. And what happens to him? Middle of page 6. He had taken only a few paces along the swaying board, the gangplank, when he lost his footing, stumbled, and with a loud splash, pitched headlong into the shallows. This is Terran's first introduction to Prince Rune. What does he think of him?
He's a klutz.
He's a klutz. What else? Unaware of his surroundings. He has poor, what's called proprioception. That is, when the foot reaches down for the ground, the toes are kind of feeling for the pressure of the earth and such. He's a bumbling idiot. He's a fool. He's a moron.
Also, he just got done dealing with Ellidir, who's a prince, and then he comes back and finds another prince who he thinks is incompetent. So.
He's now met 3 princes, right? Ellidir, Gwydion. So he has these 2 first. How does he look at Gwydion? Yes, Lord. Ellidir gives him the finger. Rune, what a moron. Not deserving of the title of prince.
Because he puts everybody up to Gwydion's standard.
Yeah, or even higher than that. Because, he meets Gwydion and goes, you can't be a prince. You don't look like a prince. You're not dressed like a prince.
Ellidir redeemed himself at the end of the time travel, so.
Yeah, and how did Ellidir redeem himself? He didn't think of his princely nature. He didn't think of himself. He thought of all the others. Okay? So, he and Eilonri are talking. Very bottom of page 9. Prince of Mona, indeed. He's no more than a princeling. That's like a little prince. A clumsy, muddle-headed baby. Him command the voyage? I've never seen anyone so feckless. Eilonri, feckless? Well, he does often seem a little dense, but I'm sure he means well. And I have a feeling he has a good heart. I think he's rather nice. Notice how Eilonri judges as opposed to how Terran judges. Terran judges by what he sees. Eilonri does what?
Tries to see better.
She goes inside. Okay, what's motivating him? What is his intent? She says, I'm sure he means well. In other words, he didn't mean to fall off the gangplank in the water. This isn't Chevy Chase in the old Saturday Night Live, stumbling at the beginning of every show. Okay? And what else? He has a good heart. For Eilonri, that counts for a lot. Terran, I suppose so. Excuse me, I suppose you do, because he gave you his arm to lean on. What does that mean, he gave you his arm to lean on? What did Rune do when he met Eilonri, and it was time for Eilonri to go on the boat?
He offered her his arm.
So what does he show Eilonri?
Manners.
manners, courtesy, respect, honor. Taryn? Has he ever offered her his arm?
Nope.
Nope. He treats her how? Like his equal. Or lower. You silly girl, he will say to her. A gallant, princely, what does Taryn consider that? Gesture. See, a gesture isn't real. It's not from the heart. Oh, he's just doing that because that's what princes do. Would Gwydion offer Eilonwy his arm? Yes, he probably would. Lucky he didn't pitch you over the side. Eilonwy, it was polite at least. Unlike some others, she could say. Which is something assistant pig keepers sometimes aren't. Taryn, oh yeah, that's right, I'm an assistant pig keeper. Yep, that's to be my lot in life. I was born to be one, just as the princeling, the little prince, the wannabe prince of Mona was born to his rank. He's a king's son, and he doesn't know what he is. So you start to see early on, I mean real early on, what one of Taryn's real issues is. Goes back to the first book.
He doesn't know who his parents are.
He doesn't know who his parents are. If he doesn't know who his parents are, he doesn't know who he is. Taryn doesn't know his identity. I'm Taryn of Caer Dallben. Okay, that's Hinwin of Caer Dallben. I'm like the pig. I don't have a last name. So he doesn't have an identity. He doesn't have Taryn, son of. Who are my parents? Who are their parents? Who are their parents? Who are their parents?
I mean, Dalvin doesn't have that either because he's just picked up by the three witches.
But does it bother Dallben?
Nope.
Is Dallben walking around at 369 years old kicking? Damn, still don't know who my parents were. Nope, he doesn't think about that at all. Okay? Eilonwy, well, you can't blame Rune. Don't blame him for being a prince because he was born, right? It's not his fault. Just a couple weeks ago, in fact, Prince Harry of England, younger brother of William, Charles's second son, gave an interview that, kind of ruffled some feathers. Because he essentially said, none of us want to be king. I sure as hell don't. And he kind of implied, it'd be okay to get rid of the monarchy. Not really. He knows, it'd be bad for, if for nothing else, tourism, to get rid of the king or queen of England. She is saying, Taryn, how can you hold, okay. What else is he? Prince. How? By birth. Okay? By birth. He doesn't have to do anything to be prince. He merely is prince. Taryn has to do everything to do what?
Be a hero.
Okay? Another way of putting that. Honorable. To prove himself. To show himself. Why? Because he's a mere assistant pig keeper. Taryn. She says you can't blame him. I mean, you could, but it wouldn't help, would it? It's like kicking a rock with your foot. What does it do to your foot? Ouch. Stupid thing to do, really. Taryn. That's probably his father's sword he's got on. I bet he's never even drawn it, except to frighten a rabbit. At least I've earned the right to wear mine. But he still calls himself a prince. Does his birth make him worthy of his rank? As worthy as Gwydion, son of Dawn? Notice what issue Taryn is raising. Worth. Worth. Who can pull the sword of Dernwyn out? Only one of noble birth, it says. And then she goes, well, no, it's not quite right. It's royal worth is what it means. Taryn, he's not worthy of the rank of prince, he says about Rune. Why? Because he fell in the water? because he falls in the water, that means he's unworthy? Ilani, you can't expect everybody to be like Gwydion. It seems to me if an assistant pigkeeper does the best he can, and a prince does the best he can, what? There's no difference between them. Yeah, Mason.
Taryn said, as in the prince, he still calls himself a prince, and honestly, he didn't even call himself a prince until they made him. He didn't even say he was a prince. Like, they could have thought he was just Norman or something. And so he's not like bragging about it or anything.
He doesn't walk around saying, "Move aside, let Prince Rune come in." He doesn't talk like that at all. Okay? Look at that passage by Elanwi again. If an assistant pigkeeper does his best, and a prince does his best, they're the same. They're equal. There's no difference between them. The difference is if a prince does his best and an assistant pigkeeper doesn't do his best. Where does all that worth lie?
And their intentions.
In your intentions. Do you try to do your best or not? I used to work when I was in college. I was on college work study. And I worked for a guy in preventive maintenance. We would go around and change ballasts and light bulbs and fix electrical problems and everything. And he had a motto: make it ugly. If we had to make something, make it ugly so that somebody would know you were there or had been there. And this always bothered me because it's like, don't do your best. I'm in this thing now where I'm kind of doing this distance education. It's kind of related to my church. And a bunch of people are doing this. And this other guy who's doing it, he's at another church in the same archdiocese. He told somebody I know, just shoot for a passing minus grade. A barely passing. Just do the bare minimum, in other words. And I was like, really? Why would you just do the bare minimum? Why not try to do your best and show something? That's what Ilanwi is saying here. Taryn, no difference? You spoke well enough of Rune. Has she not spoken well of Taryn?
She has.
She has. She goes, Taryn, why, I believe you're jealous. And sorry for yourself. Well, that's as ridiculous as painting your nose green. Why? Why is feeling sorry for yourself? Is she talking about that generically? No, she's not. She's telling Taryn, you feel sorry for yourself. Why? Because he doesn't have a title? Because he doesn't have a last name? Taryn said no more, but turned away and stared glumly at the water. Gurgi comes up. He doesn't like sailing. Prince Rune appeared not the least distressed, middle of page 11. He ate heartily, was in the best of spirits, while Taryn huddled wretchedly in his cloak. Notice, Rune can do something well. He's not sailing the ship himself, but he has good sea legs. He doesn't get sick in his stomach. Kind of makes sense since he lives on an island, right? And he and Elanwi and Rune talk a little bit. We get chapter 2. They arrive at Dennis Ridnet, Rune's home. And Taryn meets the king and queen. Okay. King Rudlum and Queen Teleria. And Queen Teleria is what kind of person? What kind of woman?
She's very proper.
Very wealthy and very proper. What does it mean, very proper? Well, first of all, she wouldn't drink out of one of these. But if she did, what would she do?
Pinky.
Got little fingers out, man. Why?
She's classy.
Because she's classy. That's manners. Okay? What does she think when she sees Taryn and Gurgi?
That they're, yeah.
Louder, Daniel?
They're kind of scrubs.
Yeah, they're low life. Well, I mean, Gurgi is low life, right? Because he's not human. He's somewhere in between. Okay? What about Ilanwi? She kind of looks her over and, okay, I guess I can work with that. She's got to pretty her up. She needs a good bath, like long bath. Hair has to get combed and brushed. She probably needs a little makeup. Okay. And page 17, Fluter shows up. He tells him what he's been doing for a while, for about a year, wandering around, acting as king, but, he needed to get away. Okay? Page 19, they talk about the chief steward, Mag, and Fluter says, he turned me out. He has to sleep where?
In the stables.
In the stables. And yet Fluter is what?
A king.
He is a king in his own right. Tarrant can't believe this. Tarrant says, are you sure there wasn't some mistake? Top of page 19. From what I've seen of him, he seems to do his duties perfectly. Tarrant's looking at him from the eyes of kind of serving people, and he says, he's a good serving man. Okay? Only we come to find out, what about him? He's untrustworthy. Gwydion shows up, bottom of page 20, but he doesn't show up as Gwydion. He shows up as the cobbler, shoemaker. And he says Eilonwy is in danger. Okay? As is Tarrant. So he reveals about himself, and he says Eilonwy is in danger from Aughrim. I'm going to skip a bunch. And you can skip that. Tarrant says to Eilonwy on page 28, when she wants to go riding, I think it is, he says, but there may be dangers. Dangers, Eilonwy says. Well, you can be sure of that. And the biggest danger is I'll be bored to tears. Don't think for an instant I mean to wear out my days in this castle. You of all people. Tell me I'm not to go adventuring? Come on, what's really the matter? He can't tell her because he is sworn to silence. Okay? So Tarrant says, I'm going to ask Rudlam, King Rudlam, to put a guard over you, which really angers her. The next chapter shadows, Tarrant follows Mag when he leaves the castle and runs into Gwydion. And I'm going to skip a bunch. Gwydion tells him, keep his eyes open, keep your mouth shut. Don't, what's the phrase I want? Don't do anything suspicious. Don't draw suspicion. Okay. And the next morning, Eilonwy comes out of her room, this is page 38, and almost trips because there's Tarrant sleeping across the threshold of her doorway just about. She's like, what are you doing? He said, the hallway was more comfortable than his chamber, where he's got a nice bed. She says, that's silly. He goes into the kitchen, down to the great hall for eating after Eilonwy. And he gets in there and she's not there. Chapter 5. Where is Eilonwy?
She rode off with Mag.
But Tarrant cries that. Where is Eilonwy? Where is Mag? He's made off with her, sire. Okay, now how long has Mag been at the service of King Rudlam?
Years.
And here's this upstart, this kid. And the queen's like, what? Mag, the princess? So they seek out Mag. They don't find him. Tarrant tells them Prince Gwydion, is looking for Aughrim. And so they set up a war party to hunt for the princess, who naturally is put in charge of the hunting party. Rune, he's the prince. Okay. Page 44. Tarrant burst out. Rune in command. The king. Well, Do you question his skill? Terran, he has none. Arlanwi's life hangs in the balance. Our task must be done without delay. Give command to a feckless fool. He can barely knot a sandal lace, let alone ride a horse or wield a sword. The voyage to Mona showed me more than enough. Choose one of your liegemen, a warrior, a forester, anyone, save Rune. And then he realizes, oops. Dalbin has my oath to protect Arlanwi, and I say what is in my heart. Were I to say less, I would fail my duty. If I am to suffer for my words, in other words, I know I overstep my bounds by saying your son's a moron. The king, no, you speak the truth. It's not you who suffers, but I. Think you I do not know my own son? You are right in your judgment, but I know too that Rune must grow to be both a man and a king. You carry the burden of an oath to Dalbin. Now swear an oath to me. Word of your deeds has reached Mona. In other words, you're a hero. And I have seen for myself that you are a brave lad and honorable. I confide this knowledge to you. My master of horse is a skillful tracker. Rune only commands a name. My master of horse will do all the real leading. So he asks Terran, here's the oath I want from you. And I lost my place. That Terran swears, your son, bottom of page 45, your son will come to no harm if it lies in my power to keep him from it. I pledge my life. Okay? So now, that pledge takes precedence over the pledge to Dalbin. King Rudlam says, go with my thanks, help us bring the princess home. Okay. So, page 47, they get ready to go off, and Terran is talking with Fluter, and Terran says, you do know that Arlanwi is supposed to be married to Rune, right? He says, you know, you're aware of that. Because Terran has been told. Fluter, bottom of 46. Rune, to be wed? Had no idea. Oh, says Fluter, skipping a couple paragraphs. So that's the way the wind blows. I'd always hoped that if Arlanwi were betrothed to anyone, it would be, yes, well, what I mean to say is that despite all the squabbling and bickering between the two of you, I'd rather expect it'd be you, Terran. Terran, do not mock me. Arlanwi is a princess of the House of Lear. You know my station as well as I. What does he mean by station?
That he's just an assistant gatekeeper.
I have no status. She's a princess. Who do princesses marry? Princess. Or kings. But not lowlifes, not assistant pig keepers. You know my station as well as I. Such a hope has never been in my mind. Liar, liar, pants on fire. It is only fitting for Arlanwi to be betrothed to one of her own rank. And he rides off, and Fluter goes, yeah, right. So you say. Look closer into your heart. You may find your opinion to be somewhat different. So they continue going off looking for Arlanwi. The master horse is calling the other warriors, and where is Rune? Nowhere to be found. He just rides on happy-go-lucky. Terran's like, oh, great. I've got an oath. I've got to find him. Page 49. Terran says he can't have ridden far. Even Rune would have wits enough to stop when it gets dark. They don't find him. Terran thinks he might have fallen from his horse, page 50. He might be lying hurt or unconscious. Fluter, then we should go back to the rest of the band and ask them to help us. Terran, lose too much time. Okay? And let's see, I'm going to skip that. I was going to talk about it. Chapter 6, the potions of glue. They make their way on and they find this hut-like thing with Rune's horse, mare, standing outside it. They go inside and let's see here. They go inside on a 54 at the bottom. They see Rune beaming, standing in the doorway. Aside from looking a little sleepy, he appeared quite himself and altogether unharmed. He says, I hope you've got some breakfast with you. This is the next morning. Come in, come in. Very comfortable place. And Taryn's like, what have you done? Why did you leave the searching party? He said, no, how can I leave the searching party? I am the searching party. I lead it wherever I go, they're supposed to follow. He says, you're the ones who got lost. Taryn, yes, your command, Lord. But it seems to me, Taryn says, as you were born as a king's son, but you need not remind us we are under your orders, but you should stay close to us. So what do they discover in this hovel? Well, they find a book, and pages 58 and 59, they start to read this book, and it tells them about this character named, bottom of 57, Glue, G-L-E-W, who made potions. Okay? And it talks about the potions he's making and how he's testing them on his cat, a polecat. Not a house cat, but something like a small, maybe like a bobcat or a lynx. Okay? On page 59, Fluter says, he must have grown fond enough of her to give her a name. Oh, here it is, Lion, or Leon. Apart from feeding her those dreadful messes, I expect he didn't treat her badly. Leon began to grow. Glue mentions he was obliged to make a new cage for her. And still another. Till she gets so big, cages don't hold her. Glue's gone, they realize. The place looks abandoned. And then they realize Leon is still around. And they look out the door as she starts to make her way in. And there is this giant cat, 61, that growls at them. Taryn had never imagined top of 62, a mountain cat so big. The animal stood as tall as a horse, but leaner and longer. Okay, tall as a horse? Yeah, probably about like that. But it's a cat. So lengthwise, if the cat's back is this tall, head to rump, the cat's probably about as big as from me to that door, plus its tail. It's bigger than any cat you're going to find anywhere else in the world. And it's growling. What kind of conclusion do they immediately jump to?
That I want to eat them.
The cat's hungry. Okay? So how do they get past Leon?
They find out that he likes the harp music that Fluter
What's-
can play.
The old adage, music hath power to soothe the savage beast. So Fluter just pulls the harp out because it's what he does when he's nervous. And he starts to play. And they realize when he starts to play, she stops growling, she kind of curls up, starts to close her eyes, and they're like, that's it, Fluter. Now just keep playing and then we can escape. He's like, I'm going to have to stop playing when I leave. Chapter 8, Fluter says at the beginning of it, fly from here. Begone, I've no idea how long she'll want to listen or how I can keep playing. And lack of sleep is getting to me. Taryn, there must be another way. We can't leave you. I like it no more than you do, but this is your chance. You must take it now. Fluter says, be gone. So, Terran and Rune leave. Leaving Fluter alone with this giant carnivorous cat. And Gurgi too. Rune, bottom of 68, falls to the ground because he's so tired. And then he says, when Terran kind of gives him a nasty look, I can guess what you're thinking. If it hadn't been for me, you wouldn't be in this plight. And I'm afraid you're right. It's my fault things turned out as they did. I can only ask your forgiveness. I'm not the cleverest person in the world. Okay? Showing this self-awareness. I'm sorry, Terran, it's my fault. I'm not the brightest. Rune added, even my old nurse used to say I was all thumbs. But I hate being a blunderer. He knows he's a blunderer. He hates it. He tries to not be. It's not what people expect of a prince. Right? Because princes are supposed to be what? Gwydion. Perfect in every way. I didn't ask to be born into the royal house. That at least wasn't my doing. But since I was, I want very much to be worthy of it. What did Terran say earlier to Eilonwy?
That he wasn't worthy.
He wasn't worthy of the rank. His wanting to be worthy of it shows what?
That he is worthy.
He is worthy of it. Okay? Terran, if you want to, then you shall. Does he really mean it? Suddenly and strangely touched by the Prince of Mona's frankness, and not a little ashamed of his own unkind thoughts, I ask your own forgiveness. If I envied your rank, it was because I believed you held it as a lucky gift and took it for granted. Notice Rune has said, I want to be prince-like. You speak the truth. For a man to be worthy of any rank, he must strive first to be a man. Hello? Mirror to Terran. Rune, that's just what I mean. That's why we have to rejoin the Master of Horse, don't you see? I can't fail in this. I want to be the one who finds Eilonwy. After all, I'm engaged to her. Terran, I thought only your parents knew. Oh, there's been rumors all over. Okay? So Terran says, all right, since we're fessing up, I swore an oath to your father that I'd make sure nothing ill happened to you. Middle of that next page, I might have guessed as much. I know I wasn't really in command. I know I wasn't really leading. No more than I am now. I'm under your orders. You decide what to do. Terran, there are others who can finish the task, that is, of finding Eilonwy. As for us, what do they have to do?
Just get back to the castle.
Okay. And as Terran says, as for us, Gurgi says, look. And there's Fluter running. He says, I put her to sleep. So now they're all reunited. So now they can go back and start looking for Eilonwy. When, out of the blue, literally, Caw comes flying, page 72. And he croaks out, Eilonwy, Eilonwy. So, they follow Caw's lead. They go to the river, and we can skip some. They find bottom of 75, Eilonwy's bauble, and footprints, hoof prints. They see a raft, or make a raft. Yeah, they make a raft. They go into the river. They sink. And page 80. Wait. Very bottom of 79. Okay. They try to rebuild, they think they're going to rebuild the raft. Very bottom of 79. The Prince of Mona had made his way to a clump of osiers, no idea what that is, and Taran glimpsed him tugging away, trying to uproot them, branches. The next instant, Rune was no longer in sight. It just disappears. Fluter says, if there were a field with one stone, he'd trip over it. A flam is patient, but there are limits. And they go to where Rune was, and there's a cave. And as they're standing there, the opening of the cave gives way, and they both fall back in. Okay, Fluter and Taran, where Rune is. So now they're all four, because Gurgi's with them also, are stuck in this cave. Page bottom of 83, they ask Gurgi, Taran does, to try his flints to start a fire. Gurgi says he doesn't have them anymore. And page 84, they think about the bauble that Eilonwy's had. They know that Eilonwy can make it glow. The golden sphere lay cupped in his palm. He could feel its smooth, cool surface and its weight, which was somehow not weight at all. That is, he could feel its weight, and then he realizes, well, wait a second. It's like it doesn't weigh anything. Huh. He sensed the eyes of the companions on him and could guess at their hopeful glances. Bauble doesn't do squat. Taran, I cannot do it. I fear it is not given to an assistant pig keeper to command such a thing of beauty and enchantment. Rune, no sense in my trying. I know I can't make it work. Very first time I held it, the thing blinked out the moment it was in my hands. Fluter, Taran hands it to him. You know the lore of the bards. You try. Fluter tries, doesn't do anything. And he says, page 85, a flam never despairs. A flam never gives up, you know. I'm coming rapidly to believe this pit will be our grave without even a decent mound to mark the spot. Gurgi gives the bauble back to Taran, who cups it in his hands, and we're told with yearning now he held it, and his mind turned from his own plight to thoughts of Eilonwy. So when he was holding it earlier, what's he thinking? We're in the dark, we need light. Let there be light. It doesn't do anything. Now he's holding it. He doesn't think of himself. He thinks of Eilonwy. He saw her face and once more heard her gay laughter ring clearer than the notes of Fluter's harp, and he smiles to himself. And he starts to put the bauble inside his jacket, and what happens? There's a little bit of light. What's causing the little bit of light? His thoughts of Eilonwy. Why? Is Eilonwy the secret password or thought word?
No, he decided to think of somebody else besides himself.
Bingo. He thinks of somebody else. He doesn't think of himself. Okay? That's it. He doesn't think of himself. He's not selfish. He's humble. See, humility is not thinking you're the worst there is. Humility is always putting somebody else above you, putting somebody else before you, thinking of somebody else instead of yourself. A point of light had begun to flicker in the depths of the sphere. Taran sprang to his feet as it blossomed and shimmered. Gurgi, kind master saves us. Yes, yes, takes us from loomings and gloomings, joy and happiness, fearful darknesses, etc. Rune, amazing, look at that. And they look around at the cave. It's a big cave, there's crystal. Okay. Taran wonders if it's part of the fair folk realm. They keep walking on, and Rune, pages 88 and 89, says, I say, there's an odd thing. And it was a strange thing. Looked like a hen's egg sticking halfway out of a nest. Stone was white, smooth, somewhat pointed at the top, crested here and there with patches of lichen, stood nearly as tall as Terran. Ruin. Well, that's strange. This isn't rock at all. He turned in surprise to the companions. Well, this is unbelievable, but it's almost like... Terran pulls him back. His two colorless eyes appear in a face pale as a dead fish. Puny things. I am glue. Glue. Not being dummies, they put two and two together rather quickly. If glue can make a small-ish, because he's bigger than a house cat, a smallish cat, bobcat-like size cat, to the size of Leon, pretty clear what glue has done. Why does glue make this enlarging potion?
Because he was a short guy. Short and lippy.
He was a small person, and he's heard, the song about small people too much. So what happens with them and glue?
Glue, he basically is like, hey, can you help me with something? And then he traps them because he wants to test his potions on them.
Okay.
And then it goes on that he says he has this potion to get him out, but it's going to cost one of them. And that's when Room decides that he's going to step forward.
Yeah,
and
he
goes into the oath.
he says, I can let you go, but one of you needs to stay back. Okay. And page 106, Gurgi says, I will go. Yes, yes, he will give his poor tender head for broilings and boilings. Terrence says no. Okay. Terrence says, we cannot take Glue's bargain. Fluter says, no, I'll stand sword in hand, smite the little fellow about the knees. Because Fluter says, I'll stay back. And Rune says that he thinks it's worth the risk. Terran turns in surprise at Rune, page 107. It's the only thing that will satisfy Glue, says Rune, and for that I think it's a very cheap bargain. Terran, no life can be so cheaply held. Rune, no, you're wrong. Why?
Because he feels that he is like a, can't think of the word to say, but he feels that he is kind of like holds them back, I guess, from what they need to do.
Exactly.
Gets in the way.
Look at what he says. I've thought a great deal about this since we've been in the cavern. There's no sense not facing facts. I've not been a help anywhere. On the contrary, I've brought nothing but bad luck. It's because of me that we're not with the hunting party. It's because of me that you're down in this cave. He says, not that I meant to, but it seems that's the way of it. So if any of us can be dispensed with, it should be me. It's true, he says, when Terran tries to protest. I'm delighted to be of some use for once, especially if it will help Ilonmi. What's he offering?
To be unselfish.
Sacrifice myself so you can rescue Ilonmi. I assure you I won't mind in the slightest. As Glue says, it will only take a moment. In other words, the dying will be quick. There's not one of you who wouldn't give up his life for a companion. We've already seen them attempt that. Fluter Flam offered his life for hours in Leon's lair. Even now, poor Gurgi is willing to offer his. A bard, a humble creature of the forest, and assistant pig keeper. Can a prince do less? He's kind of saying, this is what a prince ought to do, if he's a real prince. I doubt I should ever really be able to measure up to being a true prince, except in this. Terran, you speak of measure? I had measured you as no more than a feckless princeling. I was wrong. You are a truer prince and better man than ever I believed. But this sacrifice is not yours to make. You know my oath to your father. He says, okay, that's right, heavy oath. I lift it from you. You no longer have that oath. And then he notices, well, where'd all the bats go? We'll stop there. We'll pick up with the ladder. We'll have a quiz on Tuesday over the Castle of Lear, but you should start reading, probably get halfway through Terran Wanderer, which is the next book in the series.